Hi, I'm Lauren. I'm a 26-year-old college dropout and single mother of 9-year-old twin girls, Maya and Alana. Before you start calculating our ages, let me explain. After years of hard work and study, sleepless nights and sacrifice of a social life and against all odds, I was on pace to graduate from uni. I only had one semester left to go. Then I would be free. I would find my dream job, make lots of money and escape the hell that seemed to be my lot in life. But one fateful rainy night changed my life forever. I remember it well. I fumbled in my bag nervously trying to silence my cell phone. The loud chirping and buzzing sound from the vibration echoed through the quiet library. Some of the students looked up at me, clearly annoyed. When I didn't recognize the number, I declined the call and put it on silent mode, then went back to my own studies. I remember exams was coming up and I had to maintain my grades in order to keep my scholarship. My family was extremely poor, so it was do or die for me. Most definitely poo or get off the pot time. I had completely forgotten to turn my cell phone back on when I returned to my dorm room. I was so preoccupied with the exams I just fell on the bed and closed my eyes and fell into a deep sleep before my head hit the pillow. But I was startled awake by someone urgently knocking on my door. It was a friend from my hometown who had been attending the same university. We weren't close, but we were cordial. We had a few mutual friends back home, but we definitely didn't run in the same circles. My family was the type no one wanted to be associated with. And her family was the one everyone wanted to be associated with. Hey Lauren. Turn on your phone. Your family is trying to contact you. I thanked her and turned it on. There were hundreds of missed calls and messages. As soon as the cell powered up, it began a series of bings and pings of urgent messages. But in the midst of that, my cell rang and I answered it. Come home now. It's terrible. Roseanne and James are dead. What? What? The rest of that time was a blur. I rushed home to find my family in complete turmoil. Roseanne was my first cousin and the only family member who had her act together. She married her high school sweetheart and soon after had her adorable twin daughters, Maya and Alana. James was an only child. He lost his mother when he was in junior high school and was raised by his dad. I considered Roseanne to be the lucky one in the family. She had done everything right. Although she didn't go to university, her plans were set. It was always her dream to marry the love of her life, James, and be a stay-at-home mom and devote her time in raising their beautiful family. She and I talked about it often. Soon after high school, her dreams were realized and she and James married. Roseanne was my only support while growing up. She always let me know that I could rely on her. And she encouraged me to do my best and not fall into the trap that was our family. Unemployed, selfish, abusive a-holes. My family neglected us as children, barely giving us the basic necessities to sustain. But against all odds, we made it this far. Roseanne was the proudest of me when I received my golden ticket to get out of this hell. A scholarship from one of best universities in the country, which happened to be a few miles from my hometown. During the funeral, Maya and Alana clung to me. They were used to being around me because I had a close relationship with their mom. Whenever I would get a break from school, I would spend a lot of time with them. But after we buried my dear cousin and her beloved husband is when all hell broke loose. Knowing my family as I do, I should have been prepared for something like this. But I was in such grief, my guard was down and I didn't realize what was being planned until it was too late. Roseanne's mother, my Aunt Betty, the girl's maternal grandmother, wheeled 2 matching luggage sets over to me and had a faint smirk on her face. Here are the girls' things, dear. This is all their things from my house when they spent the night with me when, her mouth quivered. But not a tear in sight. Wait, what? You don't expect to leave them with me, do you? I have school, I said. I have an exam. Then my mother came over to us. Maybe because I was so loud and she didn't want me to make a scene. Which I wouldn't. I didn't want to upset the girls. But this could not happen. If I didn't take the exam, I would be considered incomplete and would lose my scholarship. There was no way I could let that happen. Keep your voice down, my mother scolded me. Don't make a scene. This is not the place for that. But Mom. She's trying to leave the girls with me and I can't keep them. I have to finish school. We'll talk about that tomorrow. For now, take the girls to Roseanne and James' house and let them get some sleep. They must be tired, my mom said. I bit down on my tongue, nodded my head and left with the girls. That was over 4 years ago. After the first week went by, I knew no one in my family was coming to take the girls so I can go back to school. After the second week, there was no use. I was marked incomplete, which was a failure as far as my scholarship was concerned. No exceptions. By the third week, I was a college dropout, jobless and soon to be homeless and a new mother of 2 small children. The one thing that was on a positive note was, the girls wanted to go back to school and see their friends, and that gave me the time I needed to find a job. My family all but abandoned us. After the funeral, the entire family ghosted. No one would answer my calls. They refused to open the door, for fear I would drop the girls off and leave, like they had done. And before long, I felt as though I had been orphaned along with the girls. So imagine my surprise when I received a phone call from James' father. I learned that, after the funeral his grief was so unbearable, he had a stroke. He was under home care and wouldn't be able to care for the girls. Otherwise, he said he would have been happy to take them and raise them. As he had done with James when he lost his wife years earlier. He thanked me for being willing to take on the responsibility of the girls and how much he knew they loved me. I didn't have the heart to tell him that it wasn't willingly, but forced. But what would be the point? He was in a fragile situation himself. There was no sense in placing guilt on him when he also lost his only son. I'll be sending you support every month to help with their expenses. I'm sorry this all fell on you, he said. I was grateful for any help. At this time, I was working 2 jobs. One while the girls were in school and another on weekends. Luckily, I was able to take them with me. But still, it was never enough to make ends meet at the end of the month. We were always lacking. Thank you so much. I can really use the help. That would be a tremendous relief for us. I nearly cried from the relief of finally being able to provide the things the girls needed and even some of the things they wanted. The support he gave was very generous. More than I even imagined. I was able to quit my weekend job and spend more time with the girls. Because of the financial support from their grandfather, we were able to enjoy a few recreational activities on the weekends. Other days I would take the girls to visit their grandfather. Or we'd just watch a movie with our jammies on and eat our favorite snacks. Which is what we were doing when my Aunt Betty decided to grace us with her presence. It had been over 4 years. She looked surprised that we were still in the house Roseanne and James left behind. They didn't own it, it was a rental. So you could tell she was wondering how I could afford to stay. As soon as I opened the door, she walked in like she owned the place. She slowly looked around as if assessing the contents of the house. She didn't even acknowledge the girls who hadn't seen her in years, but still knew who she was. You're still here, huh? She said in a slightly smug tone. She didn't even try to hide it. Yes. Where else would we be? We weren't left with many choices, were we? I said, just as smug. She rolled her eyes at that. Humph. Did you sell my daughter's valuables to stay? I laughed at that. What? What valuables? You mean the silver? Her eyes got wide with greed. Silver? It was a joke. Where would she get silver? Geez. Aunt Betty kept picking up things, inspecting it, then setting it back down. It was as if she was perusing through a department store and on the hunt for bargains. Why are you here? What do you mean? I'm their grandmother. Can't I come to visit my own granddaughters? Oh, yeah. But you haven't even spoken to them. You haven't even glanced their way. Aunt Betty turned towards the girls and threw her arms open in an exaggerated fashion and said, "Darlings. Do you miss your grandma?" Maya and Alana just stood there, not making a move towards her. Just staring at her strangely. Aunt Betty turned to me. "Did you talk bad about me?" "Of course not. They don't know you," I said. "Do you girls want to come live with Grandma? What are you doing all of a sudden? What's going on? I thought I'd come and take them off your hands." "Didn't you want to finish your studies?" she said. "Are you kidding me right now?" "How?" "We're fine. You don't have to worry about the girls." "We're all fine," I yelled out. "Who are you to talk to me that way?" "I'm their grandmother. I'm their closest kin." "What are you, third, fourth cousin?" She let out a maniacal laugh. "Second. But what does that matter? Why do you want to take them now?" Because Aunt Betty and I were yelling at each other, the girls became agitated. They hugged each other in a protective gesture. When I saw this, I lowered my voice and began to talk in a calm, rational tone. They had gone through so much, I didn't want to traumatize them further. "Aunt Betty, the girls are not going with you. They will stay with me." When I said this, the girls looked visibly relieved. "We'll see what the court has to say," then she stormed out of the house. Never even embracing the girls or truly acknowledging their presence. Only enough to try and coax them for whatever diabolical reason she had come in the first place. Soon after her visit, I began to get a barrage of complaints from absent family members telling me how selfish and inconsiderate I was for keeping Aunt Betty from her only living relative. It had gotten so bad, I finally had to block them. But a week later, it all became clear. The girls' paternal grandfather passed away. The only living link the girls had to their father, James. Though he had been sick for years, it still came as a surprise of his passing. His death came as a great loss to the girls. It was the only family member they had that maintained a healthy relationship with them, besides myself. So it was no surprise when we were summoned to his attorney's office. To our utter shock, he had left quite a hefty amount of money for the girls in a trust. $3 million each. And all of his property, that valued at an additional nearly $2 million to be split equally among them. But the real shocker was what the attorney read while we were in the office. It was a letter his son James had written before he died. Apparently his father had been trying to get him to write a will, since he had a young family, but James had put it off because he thought he had time. The letter read that, if anything happened to him, all would go to his wife, Roseanne. But if anything happened to her, all would go to his children. That amounted to a whopping $2.8 million. He also wrote that he and his wife discussed who they wanted to take custody of their children if anything happened to them. Lauren Welsh, cousin to Roseanne Bennett. Me. To show their gratitude and ease the burden of raising their twin treasures, it was bequeathed to me $1.5 million from the grandfather and $500,000 from James and Roseanne. It was also revealed that the house I had been living in with the girls was not a rental, but owned by the grandfather. That property, he left to me. Later it was revealed that Aunt Betty and my mother had been scheming for months on how to take custody of the girls after they found out the grandfather was worth millions and the girls were his sole beneficiaries after the loss of their father. But thank goodness Roseanne had the forethought to have James write a last will and testament for her daughter's sake. before she and James went on their last road trip together. The girls and I went home and celebrated in our normal fashion. We made some chocolate chip cookies, hot chocolate, and binged on one of our favorite teen drama series. As for my other family, Maya, Alana, and I cut off all contact with them. We heard that my Aunt Betty had been kicked out of her house for non-payment of her rent, and my mother had to take her into her small, run-down apartment to live their miserable lives together.
Thank you for listening to my story. Come again for more stories. And help us grow our channel. Bye.